First and foremost, workers' comp has trials, and those trials are different than what you typically see on TV. When you're talking about civil court or criminal court, oftentimes people associate the lawyer getting up in front of a jury of their peers and giving big speeches and things like that, and that's not necessarily what happens in workers' comp. In workers' comp, we have administrative law judges that are different than civil judges, and in workers' comp, we also don't have juries. It's the judge that makes the decisions, which I guess would be similar to what you would call a bench trial in civil court. However, you don't have the option for a jury trial in workers' comp, which means that the judge is presiding over the case as well as making the decisions. And unlike civil court, say for a negligence case, the damages are different. Most of the damages in workers' comp are set by statute, meaning that it's all codified and it's not within the judge's discretion to award amounts of money based on things like pain and suffering, punitive damages, general and special damages based on economic losses and things like that. The judges have the ability to award varying levels of permanent disability, as well as the injured worker's right to future medical care. The judge also has the ability to award things like temporary disability, but their powers are codified. Again, they can't go outside the scope of what they're statutorily entitled to actually award you. So I think there's a bit of a misconception where people think that going to trial means that they get to put on a big show and a jury is going to award them money based on their presentation of evidence and not necessarily follow specific rules or guidelines that are set out. So for example, if I were to say it would be similar to a jury trial, imagine if the jury actually had to follow a guidebook to say, if you had X percentage of permanent disability, you get X number of dollars. They don't get to just make up the number. And that's exactly what happens in workers' comp, although, again, it's a judge, not a jury. And oftentimes, the trials are on very limited issues. More often than not, it's the doctors in the workers' comp case that really make the decisions. And the judges, not being medical experts, aren't going to necessarily set aside or challenge a medical doctor's opinion unless the opinion is just not based in fact. So for example, if a doctor gives a really bad opinion and says you don't need to have a surgery for your arm, even though your arm's been amputated and you don't have any permanent disability, a judge isn't going to buy that. A judge is going to order another examination with another medical expert and not base a decision or award on that doctor's particular opinion. Again, every case is different. There's a variety of reasons you see us ultimately going to trial. Some are just about whether or not the injury happened at work, meaning a factual or legal dispute, or whether a case is barred by statute of limitations, whether a body part should or shouldn't be accepted. And so sometimes trials might not even necessarily be just purely about money. But again, at the end of the day, I think when we're talking about the monetary component of a trial, the damages are already set by statute. And so when we're talking about what damages are available, it's based on permanent disability in the case and the benefits that are owed. And so sometimes we can walk into trial knowing exactly what our top dollar best case scenario is going to be based on things like medical reports and the evidence we already have in the case. I don't think there's a circumstance where we go into trial knowing what our top amount could be and actually getting more than that. That wouldn't really happen in workers' comp. The one exception to that may be in the situation where there's penalties and sanctions that are being requested. In addition to that, there's also something called serious and willful misconduct, which is a penalty to the employer. Generally, when an injury is caused by something more than just negligence, when it's almost criminal negligent conduct for knowing or should have known about a dangerous condition. In addition to that, there's trials on Labor Code Section 132A, which is a labor code that prohibits discrimination or retaliation as a result of having made known your intent to file or pursue a workers' compensation case. And in those cases, you can get things like back pay and penalties. So there's additional monetary awards that may be outside the scope of the codified and statutory numbers that you'd see for things like permanent disability and temporary disability as well.